My mother chose the exact moment the check cleared to humiliate me. I was standing in the banquet hall at the Hyatt Regency in downtown Denver, holding a sweating glass of club soda, when she tapped her spoon against a champagne flute and smiled like a knife. She announced that my brother's graduation party happened because I had finally done one useful thing for this family. Then she laughed and added the amount, $8,450.22. She said it slowly, like reading auction numbers. Every face turned toward me. My Aunt Denise clapped first. My cousin Trevor whistled. My brother Caleb lifted his beer and bowed from the waist like I was a donor plaque with legs. Nobody asked why I paid. Nobody asked why the invoice had landed in my inbox at 11:43 p.m. 3 nights earlier. My name is Elias Mercer. I am 32 years old. I live in Loudoun, Denver, in a one-bedroom condo with floor-to-ceiling West glass and a server rack where most people keep golf clubs. I am a senior cloud infrastructure architect for a medical claims analytics firm. I design systems that stay calm under pressure. I noticed, almost automatically, that the venue uplighting had been programmed with a bad DMX loop because the amber fixtures pulsed every 17 seconds. That is what I do when people try to corner me. I do not react first. I measure. My mother kept talking. She said family had to drag generosity out of me because I was cold and selfish and too important for ordinary people. Caleb grinned through it. His gown was still draped over a chair, wrinkled at the shoulders, because I had also paid the rush replacement fee after he spilled energy drink on the first one. Have you ever noticed how people become brave when they are spending your money in public? I looked at the dessert table instead of their faces. 12-inch chocolate sponge, raspberry glaze piped unevenly on the left side, gold leaf placed by someone charging premium labor without premium hands. I had approved that invoice too. My humiliation was not the point. The point was the system behind it, the extraction cycle, the same one that had been running for 6 years, 4 months, and 11 days. They thought this was a celebration. I was already conducting a post-mortem. The first transfer happened on a Tuesday at 2:17 a.m. I remember because I was debugging a latency spike in our claims ingestion pipeline when my phone buzzed with a Zelle request from my mother. $320. Description field, groceries. I paid it without asking questions. That was the seed. Small, quiet, and easy to justify. I told myself it was temporary load balancing, a short-term redistribution of resources across a stressed node. That is how it always begins, with language that makes the drain feel rational. Within 6 months, the requests had evolved into structured expectations. Rent gaps, car repairs. Emergencies that arrived with suspicious regularity every second Friday. I started logging them, not emotionally, structurally, date, amount, stated reason, actual outcome when traceable. Year 1 total, $12,981.09. Year 2, $18,306 flat. No cents that time. My mother said the bank rounded it. Caleb was the constant variable. He never asked directly. He performed need, failed classes, lost jobs, broken phones. He specialized in plausible incompetence. Just enough failure to trigger intervention, never enough to force accountability. My mother handled the narrative layer. She framed every transfer as proof of my moral obligation. She called it family contribution. She said I owed them for being difficult as a child. She said success had made me forget where I came from. The phrasing mattered. It always does. My Aunt Denise reinforced it. She would call after each transfer and thank me loudly, with a tone that suggested I had corrected a personal defect. Trevor would joke about it at gatherings. He called me the family bank. Everyone laughed. Laughter is a powerful compression tool. It reduces discomfort into something manageable. By year 3, they had normalized access. My accounts were no longer private resources. They were shared infrastructure with an unspoken service-level agreement. Availability was assumed. Denial was treated as system failure. I noticed something else during that period. My mother never asked about my work. Not once. She knew I made money, but not how. She did not understand that I managed multi-region redundancy, cost optimization, and access control for systems processing millions of records daily. She only understood output. Money in, money out. That ignorance became their dependency. They took my competence for granted because they never saw the mechanics behind it. The late nights. The incident reports. The quiet decisions that prevented collapse. To them I was not a person, I was uptime. And uptime in their minds was guaranteed. They never asked what I actually controlled. That was the first miscalculation. At work, my access tier sat 3 levels above standard architecture roles. I had root permissions across our AWS organization, plus delegated admin rights for billing, identity, and audit layers. That meant I could trace every dollar, every login, every misconfigured policy down to the second it happened. In simple terms, I saw everything. At home, I built systems the same way, quietly, without announcement. My personal finances ran through a layered structure of accounts, each with defined purpose and access rules. Operating account, reserve account, tax escrow, long-term investment pipelines, each one isolated, each one logged. My mother only knew about one. The checking account she had been requesting from was a controlled endpoint. Not my core, not even close. It was a buffer layer I designed to absorb volatility without exposing the underlying system. I fed it manually in predictable increments so every withdrawal could be measured against expectation. That is how you detect patterns. You limit noise. Over time, the data became clean, requests clustered around social events, holidays, deadlines tied to Caleb's academic failures, car issues that aligned with weekends, rent gaps that appeared after online shopping spikes I could see through shared family subscriptions. I did not confront them. Confrontation creates denial. Denial corrupts data. Instead, I expanded visibility. I connected transaction alerts to a private logging dashboard. Timestamp, IP origin when available, device signature for digital requests. Even tone analysis in text messages. Not complex AI, just simple keyword weighting. Urgency, guilt, obligation, patterns sharpened. My mother's requests peaked between 10 p.m. and midnight. Emotional leverage was highest during those hours. Caleb's needs surfaced mid-afternoon, usually after something had already gone wrong. Reactive, not planned, Denise acted as amplifier. She never asked for money. She validated the requests, reinforced the narrative. Social pressure layer. Trevor was noise, irrelevant but consistent. There was also the matter of professional overlap. 6 months before the banquet, my firm onboarded a mid-sized logistics company for claims optimization. Regional fleet, poor compliance history, familiar last name in the executive roster. Caleb had listed them on his resume. That was the second miscalculation. They assumed my worlds did not intersect, that my work existed in some abstract cloud disconnected from their reality. They did not understand that infrastructure touches everything. Quietly, permanently, I had tools they never saw, access they never questioned, logs they never imagined existed, and most importantly, I had patience. Systems fail loudly when pushed too hard, but they collapse cleanly when you remove the right support at the right time. I was already mapping the dependencies. The breaking point did not arrive with anger. It arrived with a spreadsheet. 2 days after the banquet at 6:08 a.m. I sat at my kitchen counter with my laptop open and a black coffee cooling beside it. The city was quiet. Light had not fully reached the buildings across the street. That was when I did my cleanest work. I exported 6 years of transaction data into a single ledger. No summaries, no rounding, every entry intact. $57,214.63, that was the total extraction. I ran a simple categorization script. Rent assistance, education, vehicles, emergency, miscellaneous. The last category was the largest. It always is when language is used to blur intent. Then I created a second column, outcome verification, paid, unverified, misrepresented. 31% of entries fell into the last category. I did not feel anger reading that, I felt clarity. At 6:42 a.m. I opened my banking dashboard and began restructuring access. The visible account, the one my mother treated like a shared utility, was downgraded. Daily transfer limit reduced to $50, external request permissions disabled, overdraft protection removed, then I renamed it. Legacy support closed. Names matter. They communicate finality better than explanations. Next, I severed passive exposure. I removed my number from shared family subscriptions, streaming services, group payment apps, cloud storage plans that Caleb had been using as free backup for disorganized files. Each removal generated a notification. I let those notifications stack. At 7:03 a.m. I drafted a single message. No emotion, no explanation beyond structure. Effective immediately, I will no longer provide financial support. All prior transfers are documented. Future requests will not be fulfilled. Please adjust accordingly. I sent it to the family group thread. Read receipts activated within seconds. No replies yet, that was expected. Shock delays reaction. Then I handled the professional overlap. I accessed our client registry and reviewed the logistics company tied to Caleb's resume. Their compliance flags were already elevated. Expense reporting inconsistencies. Irregular fleet maintenance logs, nothing illegal yet. Just unstable. I scheduled an internal audit escalation, not punitive, procedural, the kind that forces documentation to surface under scrutiny. At 7:19 a.m. I closed my laptop. Silence returned, not the fragile kind that waits to break, the stable kind that follows a completed action. I had not argued, I had not defended myself. I had simply withdrawn access and allowed systems to rebalance. That is the difference between reaction and control. By 8:02 a.m. my phone began to ring. I let it. The first voicemail came from my mother at 8:04 a.m. Her tone was measured, which meant she was still calibrating. She said there had to be some misunderstanding. She said my text sounded harsh. She said family matters should never be put in writing. That last part interested me most. By 8:11 a.m. Caleb called 3 times. No voicemail. Then he switched channels and sent a message that read, "Bro, seriously." 2 minutes later, Mom is freaking out. 4 minutes after that, "You can't do this right now." People become very precise about timing when access disappears. I was in a budget review with our claims engineering lead when Denise entered the sequence. She wrote a paragraph dense with moral theatre. She said my mother had sacrificed everything. She said I was humiliating her over money that meant nothing to me. She ended with, "This is not who you are." It was exactly who I was. They had just never respected the version of me that used boundaries. I did not respond during the meeting. I finished the variance analysis first. Azure storage costs were up 11.8% month over month because one team forgot lifecycle policies on archive snapshots. I corrected that before I acknowledged my family. Order matters. You do not interrupt critical work to engage unmanaged chaos. At 10:26 a.m., my mother escalated. She left a second voicemail, this one sharpened for damage. She said if I refused to help, she would tell everyone how unstable I had become. She said she would contact my firm if necessary. She said people trusted charming men in suits until they saw what they were really like. That was not panic. That was control language stripped of polish. Caleb followed with threat by implication. He texted, "If this affects my job stuff, we're done." An interesting phrase. I had mentioned nothing about his employment, which meant he already sensed exposure somewhere in the system. Good. Around noon, the family group thread revived. Trevor posted a laughing emoji first, then deleted it, then wrote that I was acting corporate with my own blood. Denise said there would be consequences for embarrassing elders. My mother finally entered with the line she always used when the softer tools failed. "After all we've done for you." Gaslighting depends on replacing the ledger. It requires a false archive where support only moved in one direction. They needed me to forget every transfer, every invoice, every emergency calibrated to payday. They needed fog. I work in audit conditions. Fog is not my natural environment. At 1:14 p.m. I sent one reply. "Do not contact my employer, do not threaten me. Do not request money again." Nothing else. 3 sentences, 3 closed doors, then the calls increased. 21 missed calls by 3:40 p.m. 7 voice notes. 9 text messages from new numbers, which meant my mother had started borrowing phones for tactical surprise. Desperation was starting to outrun strategy. That was the moment I knew they would not de-escalate. They would force the next phase. They made one mistake that afternoon. They switched from guilt to improvisation. At 4:07 p.m. my mother sent a screenshot of a payment request that appeared to come from our landlord portal. Amount due, $1,892.14. Final notice language, red banner, countdown clock in the corner. It looked convincing for 11 seconds, then I zoomed in. The font kerning was wrong on the decimal places. The notice ID used 8 digits instead of our building's standard 10. The support email ended in helpdeskrent.net, which is the kind of fake domain built by someone who thinks panic cancels scrutiny. Caleb had assembled it in a hurry. I could almost see the fingerprints. I saved the image, extracted metadata, and ran a basic header trace on the embedded link from the message export. Redirect chain. Disposable domain registrar. Setup time. 3:41 p.m. same day. Payment endpoint pointing to a personal wallet intermediary before routing elsewhere. That moved this from manipulation into documentation. I opened a fresh case folder on my local encrypted drive. Directory name, Mercer Family Incident Archive 01. Inside it I created subfolders by evidence type, banking, messages, voicemails, fabricated documents, employment overlap, third-party witnesses. Then I got methodical. First, I exported every family text thread in raw format with timestamps preserved to the second. CSV for analysis, PDF for human readability, JSON for integrity. I hashed each file with SHA-256 and logged the checksums in a plain text manifest. That way, if anyone later claimed alteration, I could prove chain consistency. Second, I processed voicemail audio. I ran speech-to-text transcription through my local toolkit, then hand-corrected names, amounts, and threats. Time indexed. Speaker labeled. Confidence notes attached where words clipped. My mother's 10:26 a.m. message became entry V14. Denise's moral lecture became V16. Caleb's slurred midnight demand from 3 months earlier, the one where he admitted using rent money for a networking weekend in Aspen, became V03. Third, I reconciled the financial ledger. $57,214.63 in outbound support. I matched 42 representative transfers to their stated purpose, then cross-referenced social posts, vendor receipts, geotagged photos, and shared subscription activity. Emergency dental bill, actually concert tickets and rideshare charges. Car repair, actually custom wheels, textbook fund, bottle service and hotel minibar. Receipts change the emotional temperature of a room. By 6:12 p.m. I had a timeline with 186 entries and a color-coded evidence matrix. Green for verified need, yellow for unsupported claims, red for provable deception. Red dominated the screen. I was not building a revenge fantasy. I was building an administrative trap, clean documentation, multiple formats. Independent verification, no dramatic language, just a record that could survive contact with lawyers, human resources, or public embarrassment. When people live by gaslighting, the most dangerous thing you can hand them is an organized archive. At 7:03 p.m. my mother requested a meeting, not a call. Not a message, a meeting, location specified, my Aunt Denise's house in Aurora. 8:30 p.m. she wrote that we needed to clear the air like adults. That phrasing is always a signal. It sounds neutral. It is not. Neutral meetings do not require witnesses. I accepted without negotiation. Then I prepared. First, I packaged a subset of the archive, not everything, just enough to establish pattern without overwhelming the room. 22 entries, balanced across time. Clean examples, each one paired with its contradiction. I exported them into a single PDF, paginated, indexed, and bookmarked. Title page. Financial support record summary extract. No adjectives, no commentary. Then I printed 3 copies. Paper changes behavior. Screens invite dismissal. Paper sits on a table and refuses to disappear. Second, I staged my device. Laptop fully charged, offline copy of the full archive, no reliance on cloud access. No risk of signal interruption. I also set my phone to record locally. Audio only, discreet, not hidden, just not announced. Transparency does not require permission. Third, I adjusted my expectations. This was not a negotiation. It was a controlled environment where they would attempt to reassert narrative dominance. Guilt. Revision, pressure, possibly escalation into personal attacks. The goal would be to provoke a reaction I could not defend. I do not give people that option. At 8:26 p.m. I parked 2 houses down from Denise's place. Streetlight flicker on the left side. One bulb cycling at irregular intervals. I noted it automatically. Environmental inconsistencies matter. They tell you how much attention has been paid to maintenance. Inside, the house smelled like reheated pasta and citrus cleaner. Caleb was already there. He leaned against the kitchen counter with a posture that tried to look casual and landed somewhere near defensive. Denise sat at the table. My mother stood when I entered, then did not move toward me. No one offered water. That was intentional. Sit, Denise said like she was managing a hearing. I sat. I placed the 3 printed copies on the table, aligned with the wood grain, and slid one toward each of them. No introduction, no explanation. Caleb glanced at the first page, then looked at my mother. She did not touch it. Denise picked hers up, flipped twice, and set it back down as if the paper might argue with her. This is unnecessary, my mother said. We are family. That sentence is a request to ignore evidence. I opened my laptop and mirrored the same document on screen. Page 1, then page 5, then page 11. I did not rush. I let the numbers sit in the air between us. They had invited me into a room designed for pressure. I had brought structure instead. Denise broke first. She tapped the paper with 2 fingers and asked what I thought I was proving. Her voice carried authority, but the rhythm was off. People who control narratives rarely read ledgers. "I'm not proving anything," I said. "I'm documenting." My mother exhaled sharply. She said documents can be twisted. She said numbers don't tell the whole story. Then she shifted tone, softened it, and said I was hurting her with this approach. That pivot was practiced. Pain, then blame, then confusion. Caleb did not speak. He kept scanning page 3 where entry F showed a transfer labeled car repair matched against a receipt for aftermarket rims. $890, same day, same card. That was a gift, he said finally. No, I said, it was a misrepresentation. Words matter. I use the ones that hold up. My mother leaned forward. She said I had always been difficult. She said I made everything transactional. She said normal families do not audit each other. Denise nodded as if agreement could erase timestamps. Normal families don't require audits, I said. Silence followed. Not long, just enough, then the pressure shifted. Denise suggested a reset. She said we should agree on a monthly amount, predictable, fair. She used the word sustainable. That was interesting. They were trying to convert chaos into a subscription. I closed that path. There will be no monthly amount, I said. Support has ended. Caleb laughed once, short, sharp. He said I was bluffing. He said I would come around when things calmed down. He said I always did. That assumption was the last remnant of their model. Past behavior projected into the future. Reliable, repeatable, exploitable. Open page 17, I said. They did, reluctantly. Entry E, fabricated rent notice, metadata summary, domain registration timestamp, redirect chain, wallet endpoint. I watched their faces instead of the screen. Denise frowned first. Caleb looked away. My mother held still, which meant she was calculating. This is what today looks like, I said. Not last year, not your version of events, today. Denise said it could be a mistake. She said links get spoofed. She said we should not jump to conclusions. The defense was thin. It relied on confusion. Confusion collapses under sequence. I traced the headers, I said. Setup time, payment path, device signature. Caleb shifted. His hand tightened on the edge of the table. That was the first physical tell. My mother changed tactics again. She stood, paced once, then faced me with a tone that aimed for authority and landed in threat. If you take this outside the family, she said, you will regret it. The room cooled, not literally, perceptually. Threat introduces clarity. It removes the last pretense of repair. What would you do if the people closest to you told you calmly that consequences were coming if you kept records? I closed my laptop halfway, not fully, just enough to signal transition. This meeting is over, I said. Further contact should be written. Then I stood, collected nothing from the table and walked out. I left the printed copies behind. Paper has a way of staying. Behind me, someone said my name. I did not turn. The collapse began the next morning at 9:12 a.m. And it followed a sequence I had already mapped. First, the audit escalation triggered inside our firm's compliance queue. The logistics company tied to Caleb's resume moved from passive monitoring into active review. Expense reports flagged. Maintenance logs requested. Driver records cross-checked against insurance filings. It was not personal. It was procedural. By 11:03 a.m., Caleb texted me for the first time without attitude. Did you do something at work? No greeting, no accusation, just a question shaped by fear. I did not answer. At 1:27 p.m. Denise called twice, then left a voicemail that sounded smaller than her usual tone. She said things were getting complicated. She said people were asking questions. She did not specify who. She did not need to. My mother waited longer. She always did when the situation required recalibration. Her message came at 3:18 p.m. calm. Controlled. She said we needed to talk privately. She said outsiders were misunderstanding things. She said families handle their issues internally. That sentence no longer applied. The audit expanded over the next 48 hours. Fleet maintenance discrepancies surfaced first, deferred inspections. Missing documentation. Then expense anomalies aligned with Caleb's employment period, small numbers individually, significant when aggregated, patterns repeat across systems. By day 3, the company initiated internal disciplinary review. Caleb's name appeared in 2 flagged reports, not as the primary source, as a contributing node, enough to matter. Not enough to hide behind, he called me that night. 10:44 p.m. I answered this time. What did you send them? He asked. Nothing, I said. They followed their own process. Silence, then breathing. Then the first honest sentence I had heard from him in years. I might lose this. Yes, I said. I did not add anything else. Denise's tone changed completely by the end of the week. No more authority, no more lectures. She asked if I could clarify some misunderstandings. She asked if there was a way to stop things before they escalated further. There was not anymore. My mother attempted one final strategy: reputation containment. She contacted extended family, framing the situation as my overreaction. She said I had become obsessed with control. She said success had distorted my priorities, but narratives require consistency, and consistency fails under pressure. The printed documents I left on Denise's table had already circulated. Quietly, selectively, people compared notes, dates aligned, amounts matched, the fog they relied on began to thin. By the end of the second week, the logistics company placed Caleb on suspension pending review. 2 supervisors were reassigned. Denise stopped calling entirely. Trevor sent a single message. Didn't know it was like that. My mother remained silent. Systems do not collapse with noise. They collapse when support is removed and reality is allowed to stabilize. That is what I had done. Nothing more. 6 weeks later, the silence had structure. My phone no longer carried unpredictable spikes of demand. No midnight requests. No urgent transfers disguised as necessity. The absence was not empty. It was stable, like a system finally running within capacity. Caleb sent one message during that time, short, direct. He asked if I knew of any openings at my firm. No apology, no explanation, just a request shaped by consequence. I reviewed it the same way I review any inbound ticket. Context, history, risk. Then I declined, not with anger, not with satisfaction, just a single sentence. There are no suitable roles at this time. That was true in more ways than one. Denise never contacted me again. Her influence had always depended on noise and proximity. Without access, without narrative control, she had nothing to amplify. Trevor adjusted fastest. People like him always do. He stopped making jokes, started using neutral language, adapted to the new system because it required the least effort. My mother took the longest. Her final message arrived on a Sunday at 2:03 p.m. No accusations, no threats, just a line that tried to sound reflective. I hope you find peace with this. I read it once, logged it mentally, then archived the thread. Peace is not something you find, it is something you engineer. What would your life look like if every hidden drain, every quiet manipulation, every unspoken obligation was mapped, measured, and removed with precision? I did not feel victorious. Victory implies conflict still matters. This was not that. This was asymmetry. They had operated on emotion and assumption. I had responded with structure and evidence. Different systems, different outcomes. My apartment felt larger after that, not physically, functionally. The server rack hummed at a steady frequency. My dashboards showed clean metrics. No anomalies, no unexplained variance. For the first time in years, my resources moved exactly where I intended them to go. That is all I ever wanted. Control, clarity, quiet.